It has been a minute, about 3 weeks, like 3 weeks. So I thought I would take this opportunity actually to talk about something that I was planning on talking about down the line, but I might as well do it now because it actually makes sense. So it's been a while because I had a bunch of work to do. I'm pretty much a contractor or a freelancer, whatever you want to call it, for the majority of my adult life. Now I own a production company. And so when somebody needs videos made, I make videos. If somebody doesn't need videos made, I don't make videos. So sometimes there's an influx of work, which is great. I thank God every day for the ability to use what I got to do what I do. And he gives me the work. He gives me everything that I get, and that's how I pay the bills. So the thing is, I get an influx of work for, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, sometimes a month. I'm just working every day, nonstop, all the time. And well, not around the clock all the time. I'll get to that. That's part of the point and why I'm using this opportunity to talk about this today. But sometimes a week or two, there's not a lot of work going on, a little bit, but not tons. That's how I've lived. And that's honestly a choice that I made about 10 years ago now. Before then, it was kind of like, it wasn't a choice that I had to make or not make. I have a son who's 12. And so before him, it wasn't really obviously like a choice that I had to make. And quite frankly, all the stuff that I'm about to say, if you want to say like, oh, who is he? He has no right to say all this stuff. I absolutely do. First 10 years of my adult life, I worked 2, sometimes 3 jobs to pay the bills. Okay. And I delivered car parts. I delivered pizza. I worked at Lowe's. I, at one point, worked at a new home builder company. That's what I did. And all the while being a recording engineer and doing that on the side as kind of a half job. So I suppose you could say at times I did 2.5 jobs, or 3 if you want to call it that. I don't want to get too much into the weeds on that. But the point is yeah, I was a person who worked, 2.5, if not 3 jobs at a time. And that was all the while, by the way, keeping my house, right? I still had to mow the lawn. I still had to go to church. I still had to do all the things that one has to do. So that's all just to give you a little bit of background so that nobody can say, ooh, who does he think he is? So after my son was born, I transferred into video from audio. And I became a filmmaker, I suppose you could say. Not a full-on filmmaker, obviously. I started at the bottom and I started editing, and then I eventually started shooting a camera and blah, 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 blah. Now, at one point, I was working in a studio, and I would drop off my son at daycare at about 7:30 in the morning, get to the studio at 8, work from 8 till 5:30, and take a very short, very short lunch, if any lunch at all. And then get off at 5:30 and go pick up my son at 6. The reason for that was because the daycare wanted to be done at 6. So you had to pick up your kid by 6. If you weren't there by 6, it was like, you had to pay $1 a minute or something like that. So I actually had a bit of a special deal with the owner of the studio that I worked for because, hey, I said, I'm a dad. This is just the way it's got to be. I've got 1 car. I don't have 2 cars. I have to pick up my son after work. So blah, 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 blah. Well, after doing that for about a year, maybe a year and a half, I don't remember exactly how long it was, I realized one day that this is all wrong. I realized one day I am waking my son up, feeding him breakfast, bringing him to daycare, and then I don't see him all day, and then I pick him up at 6 o'clock, I bring him home, we eat some dinner, and then, at this time he's 3-4 years old, so he goes to bed at like 7:30, 8 o'clock. So, you eat dinner, you play a little bit, you read a book in bed, you pray, and then he goes to bed at like 8 o'clock. So it dawned on me pretty quickly that this was all wrong. I had kind of, in a way, not entirely, but I had kind of fallen for this whole thing nowadays about, well, children really should be socialized, right? They need to be social. They need to start learning how to be social, how to interact with other kids. Think about that. Is that really true? Is that what we've been doing for thousands of years? Or has the child been growing up and being taken care of by its parents? And then at some point, nowadays, usually the age of 5, the child begins kindergarten, right? Does a 3-year-old really need to start learning how to socialize? Stick with me. What does what we call nowadays a global society? What is a global society and an increasing idea of socialism and communism? In order for that to be the end goal, what needs to happen to get there, right? What smaller successes do you need to get to that goal of a global society and socialism and communism? Okay. The Democrat Party, liberalism, 30 years ago was a different thing. Okay. I'm not talking about that. So just so we're clear, when I say the Democrat Party, okay, or liberalism, I'm not talking about what it used to be. Okay. That's a whole nother issue, and I'm not going to get into that here because I do have issues with what it used to be as well. But today's liberalism and today's Democrat Party, I think inarguably wants to move further and further and further toward that idea of a socialist state. Well, what does a socialist state or communist state need in order to succeed? It needs you to undervalue yourself. Period. Point blank. That is the small goal. Okay, the small goal, right? Little goals, baby steps, right? The first thing that needs to be achieved is for every generation to more and more and more and more, or less and less and less, value itself. Okay? The small baby step is more and more and earlier in life. We need to get you into the mindset of being reliant on an authority figure. Okay? Reliant on the government. Not reliant on yourself. Not reliant on God. Do you see? The baby steps are strip all that away, right? Strip away individualism. Individualism does not lend itself to socialism, very plainly. So the baby steps that have been being taken over the last 20 plus years is the devaluation of the individual, of you and your children. And I literally realized 10 years ago, all of a sudden, I was like, holy mackerel, I've been looking at this completely the way that they've trained me to look at it. I've been trained in this 2000s society that I'm supposed to go and work all day, right? And my spouse is supposed to go and work all day. And my child is supposed to be taken care of by some random person for the majority of his life. Now, think about this. We're talking about children here. A child does not acquire reason until the age of 7, right? They call it the age of reason. So what a child knows from 0 to 7 is simply what it perceives, what he or she sees and interacts with and does every day, and that's all there is to it. There's no reason. There's no, let me think about this. Let me assess this and figure out why this is going on, right? There's no, let me take into account the situation. Mom and dad have to go to work to pay the bills. There's none of that going on, okay? A child is a child. Very simple. So, by sending your child to daycare, what are you accomplishing for your child? Now, before I get into that, I am not saying that, of course, there are people in situations that pretty much have no other choice. There's the single mom who has to work, has nobody else that's available to take care of their child, and so they have to do what they have to do. I get it. I'm not saying that that's not a thing. Okay? But what I am saying is there are plenty of people that is not the situation for. And I will say that We can assess. We are the adults. We can figure out a better way. We can. We don't have to just accept the status quo and go, well, this is how it has to be. And the funny thing is that the new Democrat Party, they don't offer any other solution, do they? They just simply say, what we need is free daycare for all. That's the only solution. Why aren't there other solutions? Because there really are. There are tons of solutions. Let's talk about these small goals, these baby steps, and how one side of a global thinking society is going about accomplishing the task of devaluing all people. The best way to go about that is to start as young as possible. Now, in the 70s and 80s, it's a little bit harder. Now, it's very simple. You should go to work. You should work. Your career matters. What you have to do matters. You need to be able to provide a house and food and clothes and all this material stuff, right? If we think about it, we are talking about a people who want to criticize capitalism, but then they say we have to have free daycare so that you can go to work so that you can provide all the stuff you need to provide. Well, how much do you really need to provide? What you're supposed to provide is love, shelter, and food. I have to stop now because the sun is glaring directly into my eyes.